It's 12:30. Guys are still up. Coachload of Carabinieri just arrived. I'm going to go up in a little aeroplane tomorrow. I saw a little, one of those microlight aeroplanes flying over the other day, and I asked if I could hire it for half an hour. It's very cheap, so I'm going to go up in that tomorrow with my camera, and I'm going to have a look at the England camp and all the posh hotels and villa complexes along this coast and the campsites. And I'm going to have a look at a place called Forte Village. It should be fun. Ow. Ow.
Via!
I had the idea that with a trip up in this terrifying flying moped, I'd be able to make some sense of what was going on. Here I am on one of the most beautiful islands in the world, but I'm living on a campsite where some of the guys are the most blatantly narrow-minded, xenophobic thugs I've ever had the displeasure of meeting. And yet, just 2 miles down the road is the Forte Village. Comfortably billeted in the lap of expense-accounted luxury are the gentlemen of the press, many of whom are here to report the hooliganism they obviously anticipate. Both worlds live off each other, but the worst this world suffers is a bar running out of ice, the late arrival of a hire car, or, God forbid, all the tennis courts being booked. Meanwhile, back at campsite Hooligano Inglesi, it's a 3-mile walk to a bus that probably won't stop. It's inflated rip-off ticket prices to a stadium that's half empty, and it's terminal boredom with DIY facilities. And instead of a helping hand from blue-suited Italia 90 hostesses, there's a coachload of disorganized and heavily armed carabinieri waiting to kick your head in. I've decided to leave the campsite down the road because the pilot I met this morning, Fabrizio, who took me up, just going up and down the coast, said that I could pitch the tent here, and I had lunch here, and I decided to come here and have 2 days of peace and quiet, which I think I've deserved, actually. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Martina. And that's Sophie Loren behind the camera there. Okay.
Non mi vedi, non mi vedi, non mi vedi, non mi vedi. Non c'è Sophia Loren.
I hadn't really missed rural Britannia at 4 in the morning, and I slept well that night. But on waking, I wasn't immediately certain that moving from the campsite just up the road to Fabrizio's farm had been such a good idea. It wasn't exactly the cosy domestic harmony I'd expected, but I assumed in 15 years' time, these kids will have grown out of this sort of behaviour.
Fuori per e poi c'è questo anticipo di Berti che chiude molto bene ed
National pride Italiano style. It wasn't a case of if the Italians could get there, but who they'd meet in the final. I stayed in the peace and quiet of Fabrizio's family, his 7 brothers, 2 sisters, minor bird, 2 dogs and assorted bambinos for 3 days. They fed me huge amounts of pizza and chicken. Constantly they questioned me about the campsite. Why hooliganos? Hooliganos only come from London? Do you have tattoos? Only young boys are hooliganos? In the press, on the radio, on television, they'd heard about Ecco Hooligano Inglesi for months and months.
We've been here for about 2 weeks now, and we've heard constantly on the local press and on the English press that they're constantly branding us as yobos and hooligans, where the vast majority are just normal supporters.
I made the most of my time away from the campsite and started becoming a proper little investigative journo. I wanted to try and pin down the international dimension of what was going on here. I made an appointment to meet up with a sports journalist I'd run into after the Holland match. The management of Forte Village had been told not to let me in. Luckily, the journalist, Tony Quested, was happy to talk to me in the car park outside the barrier of what the hacks called Fort Apache.
I think the FA is under pressure because of what happened in the European Championships 2 years ago. A lot of that violence that was caused there was caused by German and Dutch fans and not by the English. But because hooliganism is called an English disease, everything that happens gets stuck on English fans. But certainly from the government's point of view...
What, do you think they did the best of a bad job?
I think the government is turning around and saying we don't want you back in Europe unless the fans behave. It's an impossible burden to place on anyone because you're always going to get a few loonies spoiling it. What I'm saying is that the fans of Holland, the fans of Germany, fans I've seen from Poland, in Poland and other countries are probably far worse than the English hooligans. There's only one reason we're being kept out of Europe, and that is because it is politically wise for countries like Spain and Italy, who want to get all the money from European competitions and all the success which they were starved of when English clubs were in there winning everything. They were clapping their hands when English clubs were banned from Europe, and they will put pressure on FIFA to keep England out. And all the government is doing is making it easier for them to do so.
Tony Quested had a pretty good idea of what was going on, and don't think too many of the fans didn't either. They were extras on trial in a globally orchestrated farce. My next assignment was to cover a football match, Italy versus England. The game had been put together by Fabrizio and his brothers against a campsite select 11. I was on neither team sheet, but surprise, surprise, I was the only camera there. And I was more than happy to film from the bench.
It is the World Cup Finals.
The Italians showed some nice touches and a keen and competitive friendly, unfortunately coming up against a resolute English defence. The English keeper, seeming to mistake Fabrizio's eye here for the ball, put Fabrizio out of the game needing 3 stitches, enabling a late substitution. I came on for the last 10 minutes. Having once had a trial for Swansea schoolboys, I combined the commitment of Gascoigne, the heart of Butcher, the speed and vision of Roberto Baggio, and the timing of a Welsh pit pony. Moving well off the ball, creating good space for myself outside the box, I was starved of the service my goal-scoring hunger so desperately craved. 3-3 and a good advert for football, Brian.
Non abbiamo biglietti e non c'è problema. Arriviamo a casa e il coach di prendere e messo così. Patrizia. Canta.
I'd almost forgotten we had to qualify for the second phase on the mainland, and I'd almost forgotten what it was like to be in the company of women. Franca, Fulvio, Patrizia, Roberto and Fabrizio joined me for a leisurely trip into Cagliari to watch the Egypt match.
Hello! Ma arriviamo... cioè loro lo riprendono, no?
The Egyptian Navy had given hundreds of sailors and their ship time off to swan around the Med, sailing between Sicily and Sardinia, to watch their first phase matches.